Shalom. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Balak, beginning in the book of Numbers, Sefer Bamidbar, chapter 22 and verse 2. This portion presents us with one of the most fascinating and one of the most bizarre and spiritually dangerous figures in all of Torah, the heathen prophet Bilam, son of Beor. In our Jerusalem Lives podcast this week, we shared some of the strange aspects of his persona. We reflected on the tragedy of his squandered potential for true spiritual greatness, which is contorted ego exchanged for powers of darkness. We also talked about his great level of prophecy, as well as his ability to calculate the moment of divine anger. We spoke about his jealousy for Moshe, and his essentially being a negative energy twinner to Moshe, like a polar opposite, reflected in a dark mirror. So start to open up your heart. In verse 3 of chapter 24, when Bilam introduces his third prophecy, he self-describes himself with the words Shtum ha'ayin, the man with the open eye. But the Hebrew word Shtum that appears in this verse is strange. It's what's called a hapex legomenon, meaning it does not appear anywhere else in the entire Torah. It's often translated as open eye, almost seemingly for convenience sake, because it derives from a root meaning closed or sealed or stopped up. In other words, the very opposite of open. There are numerous opinions among the great sages as to the word's true meaning. Rashi, based on Targum and Midrash, cites the view that one of his eyes was dislocated and the eye socket was hollow. And indeed, our sages understand the expression Shetum ha'ayin as alluding to his being blind in one eye, so that this title of the man with the open eye means just that only one eye was open, and therefore the phrase Shetum ha'ayin actually means the man with the closed eye. In Bilam's context, the verse's use of this unique word reflects a physical impairment whose true significance is as a spiritual metaphor for blindness. It signals to us that his prophetic vision was tainted by ego and incompleteness. His one-eyed vision alludes to his inner flaw, namely, that he sees the cosmic reality of divine power, but through a single warped lens of severity, a harsh perspective on the divine, clouded by personal ambition and self-interest. The Zohar emphasizes that Bilam's vision indeed came from the side of din, severity, not compassion. It's like he was seeing divine power, yet remained blind to divine love. And today, too, many people see cosmic truths but remain blind to love and humility and compassion, just as Bilam saw great visions, yet was spiritually one-eyed. So this deep understanding can aid us as we focus today on one particularly enigmatic statement made by the holy sages in their teachings in the Midrash Rabbah on Bamidbar. They state as follows: Never did a prophet arise among the nations like Bilam, and he was greater in wisdom than all the philosophers of the nations. He was the greatest philosopher who ever lived. This is astonishing. The sages of Israel acknowledge the wicked Bilam to have been not only an accomplished prophet, but the greatest philosopher who ever lived. Yet this is the same individual whom Torah reveals to be a man of arrogance and moral corruption, whose occult toolbox included divination, conjuring, and sorcery. So this charlatan who tried to manipulate God into doing his evil bidding for his own personal profit was the greatest philosopher? How can these two truths coexist? How can the keen insight of the sages crown Bilam with the status of philosopher emeritus, praising his supreme intellect, while in the same breath indicting him as inherently wicked? So to truly understand why Bilam's story sits at the heart of Torah, we have to step back and examine the deepest question of all. What does true wisdom mean? And why does Torah place faith, emuna, above even the greatest philosophy? Let's open our hearts to explore this crucial distinction. This paradox cuts to the very heart of Torah's understanding of the nature of wisdom, the human soul, the purpose of human intellect, and why faith is the true and ultimate crown and goal of all knowledge. For at the very center of our Parashat Balak lies a profound clash between two utterly different ways of approaching God and the world. On one side stands Emunah, faith. In chapter 2 and verse 4 of the book of Habakkuk, the prophet Habakkuk declares, "The righteous lives by his faith." That verse reminds us that a righteous person's life, his life force, his vitality comes from Emunah. It doesn't say the righteous gets by or survives by his faith. It's not about survival, it's about living to the fullest. Faith is the oxygen of the soul. Isaiah 26:4 declares, "Trust in Hashem forever, for in God Hashem is the rock of eternity." Meaning simply, trust in Hashem because He is the unshakable foundation upon which all of creation rests for all time. And Torah's commandment in Deuteronomy 18, verse 13, "You shall be tamim, wholehearted with Hashem your God," means that we do not seek omens or fortune-telling, but rather we walk simply and faithfully with Hashem. This wholeness is the essence of Emunah, tzmimut, simplicity unclouded by cynical calculation. Emunah, faith, is the pursuit of a living relationship with Hashem, grounded in deep conviction that there's a divine providence guiding every detail of existence and that ultimately everything in my life must be for the good, whether I see it or not. As the great Ramchal reminds us in Mesilat Yesharim, The Path of the Just, he says, "Trust in God is resting one's heart on the belief that nothing happens except by His will, and that He is good and does only good." Now, this is not blind faith, but rather a clear vision that all reality, including suffering, ultimately emerges from divine goodness. Emunah teaches us that God is not some detached cosmic force, but the compassionate one who cares for us and walks beside us. And Emunah is very personal. As Rav Tzadok Cohen teaches, Emunah is not only belief in God, but belief that one's own soul has a portion in the divine plan. This is the foundation of joy and courage in life, he writes. So on the other side of this world of Emunah, faith in God, stands a certain kind of philosophy, embodied by the Bilam archetype, which seeks knowledge and secrets, but without the humility or desire for a personal relationship with the God of compassion that Emunah brings. For Bilam and his ilk, wisdom becomes a tool for power and manipulation, disconnected from love and trust and surrender to the divine will. And it's precisely this divergence between a faith-driven life and a knowledge-driven life, severed from faith, that lies at the heart of our Parsha and that we must explore in order to understand the lessons of Bilam and the eternal message for our own lives. So open up your heart in the deepest way. Now, philosophy is generally defined as the study of fundamental knowledge, reality, and existence. It's intended to be a systematic study of ideas and issues, a reasoned pursuit of fundamental truths, a quest for a comprehensive understanding of the world, and a study of principles of conduct. But while the study of philosophy can cultivate traits like critical thinking and even empathy, which can contribute to personal growth and positive behavior, it doesn't necessarily make someone a better person, and that's not its goal at all. Conversely, one of the primary goals of Torah study is to guide individuals towards becoming better people. The Torah was given by God to be a source of wisdom and instruction on how to live a meaningful and ethical life by clinging to and emulating His very own attributes, fostering positive character traits and actions that benefit both the individual and society. So there's a struggle between emunah, faith, trust, humble surrender to Hashem, and philosophy. But the use of the term philosophy in this context, as personified by that chief of all philosophers, Bilam, does not refer to the sincere search and attainment of true wisdom, which is certainly praiseworthy, but rather to intellect divorced from humility, knowledge that breeds arrogance and the illusion of control. Torah encourages the pursuit of true wisdom always, but when philosophy is detached from emunah, it becomes a cold mechanism for power and self-aggrandizement. However, when intellect is tempered by humility, it becomes a magnificent vessel for the divine light. The great sage Maimonides, known as the Rambam, is famous for his philosophical works. In his Guide for the Perplexed, he seeks to unify philosophical reasoning with Torah, declaring that human reason, when guided by Torah, can elevate us spiritually. But all our Torah sages understood a dangerous truth, that intellect without humility can become the most destructive force in the world. And indeed, Bilam's wisdom drove him to a single-minded goal of destruction. Bilam is philosophy divorced from faith, and his story embodies the peril of the pursuit of godless wisdom. His own advanced knowledge fueled his ego instead of refining it. And Bilam the philosopher sees the divine patterns and cosmic truths of the universe, but because he lacks humility, his knowledge does not change him for the good. He knows secrets, but he uses them as tools of control in order to dominate others. He truly is the great philosopher. His intellectual brilliance was dazzling, But intellect alone has nothing to do with morality. He had prophetic vision, but vision without humility is a dangerous thing. Bilam's closed eye reflects a crisis of moral vision, a broken lens. He sees glimpses of truth, but remains shackled to anger, curses, and self-worship. Indeed, a philosopher without Emunah is a man with only one eye open. In short, the goal of his knowledge was to manipulate divine forces, to serve political agendas, and to enrich himself with the gifts of kings. So he stands as the Torah's eternal warning that intellectual brilliance without the moral humility that goes hand in hand with faith leads not to light, but to the darkest places of the soul, the place where knowledge devolves into sorcery. And Bilam's story is not simply about a wicked sorcerer. It's the eternal parable of what happens when knowledge becomes untethered from faith. Something to be heard deeper than ever. One of the holy Rabbi Nachman's major themes, which he emphasized throughout all his teachings, is the importance of simple faith over philosophy. He describes Emunah as being the most precious thing of all, and rails against the dangers of philosophy, warning that it can lead to existential despair. He taught that faith is not about a system of thought, but about a relationship with Hashem, cultivating a real relationship. And the soul's highest form of wisdom is the humility to stand in awe before the infinite, knowing that no mind can encompass the totality of God's truth. And in his words, faith transcends all wisdom, helping to bring us to the apex of all ultimate knowledge, to know that we do not know. This is a message that I find to be so important because Bilam fits in so perfectly with our contemporary reality. Our modern world is overflowing with knowledge, yet starving for emunah. In an age when influencers and leaders and even spiritual figures can wield enormous sway, yet remain morally compromised, Bilam stands forever as Torah's warning that a man can be a genius, a philosopher, even a prophet, and still fall into a pit of unredeemable darkness if his wisdom is not anchored in humble faith. In Psalms 111, King David declares, "The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God." These words are such a deep and fundamental Torah teaching. Faith is the vessel that holds wisdom, and humility is the glue that keeps that vessel whole. Without faith and humility, wisdom collapses into darkness. The human mind's capacity for intellectual pursuit is a blessing and a great gift, but it's a gift meant to be used to understand God's greatness, to deepen our awe and love of the Creator.